Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Peer. This is Charlotte Street's monthly artist spotlight series that we do as a Zoom broadcast this past year. And the idea of this program is that we're really hoping to connect artists at different points in their careers, explore what they're doing. Hopefully, maybe they can connect and learn some things from each other. But a big part of this is also this is treated as a calling card. So 3 artists tonight I've invited. We're all, I feel like it's worth a conversation. So they'll each have created a 5-minute video presentation, super short and sweet. And this is just really a way to kind of get an understanding of who these artists are in our community. And hopefully you'll go out and, follow their websites, check out their shows, things like that. But I'm not going to give a big intro because it's about their presentations. So tonight we have Johnny Naugahyde, we have S.K. Reed, and Carlos Ortiz-Gallo. And then my colleague, Hope Vincent, is up there in the corner, and Hope runs our marketing and manages the Zoom for us tonight. So we'll do those, jump right into them. And then after that, we'll have a little 15-minute conversation with all of them. And if any of you have questions, you can put them into the chat. And with that, I'm in need of one more person. We're already, I think we are, Hope. If you'd like to start, we'll go with Johnny Naugahyde.
Пока земля остается в частной собственности, государством всегда управляет небольшое меньшинство. Частные начали частных капиталистов или из богатых. Первый раз в мире власть государства построена у нас, в России, таким образом, что только рабочие, только трудящиеся крестьяне, исключая эксплуататоров, составляют массовые организации советы, и этим советам передается вся государственная власть. Вот почему, как не превеликость на Россию, представители буржуазии во всех странах, а везде в мире слово «совет» стало не только понятным, стало популярным, стало любимым для рабочих, для всех трудящихся. И вот почему советская власть, каковы бы ни были преследования сторонников коммунизма в разных странах, советская власть неминуема. Неизбежно и в недалеком будущем победить во всем мире. Вы хорошо знаете, что у нас еще много недостатков в организации советской власти. Советская власть не чудесный талисман. Она не излечивает страту от недостатков прошлого, от безграмотности, некультурности, от наследия Великой войны, от наследия грабительского капитализма, но зато она дает возможность переходить к социализму, она дает возможность подняться тем, кого угнетает, и самим брать все больше и больше в свои руки все управление государством, все управление хозяйством, все управление производством. Советская власть есть путь к социализму, найденный маленьким трудящимся, потому верный и потому непобедимый. Что такое советская власть? В чем заключается сущность этой новой власти, которой не хотят или не могут понять еще в большинстве стран? Сущность ее, привлекающих к себе рабочих, каждой страны все больше и больше, состоит в том, что прежде государством управляют, как иначе, богатые капиталисты, а теперь первый раз управляют государством. В массовом числе как раз те классы, которые капитализм знал. Даже в самой демократической, даже в самой свободной республике, пока остается господство капитала, пока земля остается в частной собственности, государство всегда управляет небольшое меньшинство, частное раньше капиталистов и богатых. Первый раз в мире власть государства построена у нас, в России, таким образом, что только рабочие, только трудящиеся крестьяне, исключая эксплуататоров, составляют массовые организации
hold on, I'm trying to find the next presentation. Got
So I thought to start, it would be smart to show you guys some previous work so that you can understand a little bit of my current process and practice. My research in the last years has heavily um, been revolving around family documents, letters, some birth certificates, and photographs. And through that, I've been sort of piecing together this sort of cultural connection and identity that had been erased through migration and through my own life experiences. So I became interested in reconstructing these photographs, these moments in time and history, through collage and digital manipulation. I began pulling quotes and imagery from magazines, newspapers, and found material and interposing them into these photographs and compositions. And through this work, I sort of began exploring not only my own personal history and mundanity, but also this intersectional and socioeconomic experience that I had in the States in comparison to my life back in Peru. So the previous two pieces that I showed were lithographs, and my background in school was in printmaking. But I consider myself a multidisciplinary artist who is experimenting with installation-based work. I'm very interested in using paper as my main source of material, but I'm also using things that are usually disregarded as trash. And I'm constantly revisiting old and archived work and recycling them and cutting it up and sort of being able to use past work into these sort of new beginnings. As I had mentioned, paper is one of the main sources of material that I use, and this particular piece is a great example of how I'm revisiting old work to be able to reconstruct it into new beginnings. But I'm also interested in not only using ready-made paper with patterns or textures, but I'm usually making my own paper using different found objects such as cereal boxes, newspapers, and magazines. And I'm interested in pushing this material and being able to layer it to take it outside of its original context. So in the last year, I've been focusing on sort of building these new hybrid figures. And the main focus has been to interact these new figures in these liminal moments, in these liminal spaces and passages. And through that, I'm beginning to reflect on my own intersectionality and migratory journey in this country. And I believe that these figures are sort of traveling in these spaces, looking to affirm their identity in this world filled with contradictions, misinformation, social change, etc. And as part of this new body of work, I've also began to build these sculptural components that go along with these installations and these collages. And in particularly, I've focused on food as a motif and a sort of this cultural symbolism to enrich these installations that I begin to work on. So I'm very interested in this layering of material within my work, whether it's painting, print, and sculpture, to make a cohesive integration of all the materials that I'm choosing to use. So it was only natural that as I was building these new hybrid figures, I was beginning to use these photographic references of my family to construct them. So essentially, each figure that I'm building is a combination of different body parts of a family member, whether it's a hand, an arm, a piece of clothing, or a head. And as opposed to the lithographs that I had shown at the beginning, I'm now focusing on pulling from memory to construct these sort of new moments and realities instead of focusing on a moment in time like a photograph. So, in essence, I would describe my practice and my process as instinctive and intuitive. And I believe that collage it allows me to sort of have that approach, and it's looking to emphasize not only my daily experiences, but also my identity and my own background. And even in the way that I choose to use material, I'm always looking for ways to use it independently, but how this material can cohesively mesh with other components in my work. And I think that this particular image is a great example of where I am right now in my work, and it's trying to keep this fluid and hybrid approach within my art making and my process. In which, for example, this figure can exist so cohesively in a composition with different sculptural components or different figures, but it could also exist independently. So I'm treating these figures also as puzzle pieces and exploring the endless possibilities of them. I recently just returned from an artist residency in upstate New York called Arts, Letters, and Numbers, where I've been developing more of the pieces that you've seen here today. And I just wanted to formally invite everybody to check out this new body of work at the Intra-Urban Art House in Overland Park. This show is part of a traveling group show featuring Latinx artists, and it will be debuting next week, Friday, November 5th. So I hope all of you guys can come out. Thank you.
Next, we're going to show SK Reed.
Hi, my name is SK Reed. I currently live in Kansas City, Kansas. I was born 40 minutes east of Kansas City, and I am currently an MFA candidate at the University of Kansas. I am in my second year out of 3 there, so I'm sort of like right in the middle of it. I'm going to spend my time walking you through an exhibition I'm pretty proud of that I think will show you what I'm interested in my work. Before I move on, this exhibition is at Lady Volkus Art Center in the Crossroads in Kansas City, and it will close this Saturday, October 30th. There will be a closing reception from 3 to 5 on Saturday, and I'd love to see you there. So just a little about this exhibition. My work is an attempt to understand the world, what came before, and what is happening in the present. I focus on the prevalence of and importance given to certain images, which perpetuate harmful normative ideologies in the West. Certain images are given more value and are shown more than others. This fixation of ideals and purity that began in Western Europe was taken to new extremes in America. A false ideal was established, storing itself in images and symbols which reinforce a single and dominant experience. Who a person should be and what a person should look like relied on myth to carry what was never truth forward. And so this is the entrance to my exhibition, Myth, and it's in the basement gallery at Lady Volkus. So right when you walk down the stairs, you see this curtain. To your right, you see the exhibition text, and then right behind you is actually a small installation. But the curtain became an important symbol as I was just trying to understand what it was to live in Donald Trump's America, to have a president that was a reality TV host. There was all of this performance that was enlivening, exciting his base. And I was sort of like wondering like why that was like exciting to people and like what might be going on behind the curtain. Like this like actual sad scene of people trying to hold on to something that was never like theirs to begin with. So as you come through the curtain, you enter this space. You see this wall, which has this wood grain pattern that I stenciled on with an airbrush. And this is why exhibitions are really important for artists because we get to try things like installation, and something that wouldn't happen without a space. But here, the floor, I'm trying to really flip the space. I'm trying to convey the sense of disorientation that I feel living in the world, trying to take in all that came before me while still doing my daily like tasks, and that can be really disorienting. And so the floor is flipped, and the large painting that is the centerpiece of the exhibition is on the floor, and you have to encounter it because it takes up so much space. And here in this painting, you see 2 muscle men, sort of based on like these Herculean figures, a jester, a noble woman, knights, and angels, and they're all like trying to care for these flowers in this very barren landscape. That like has volcanoes erupting, is like on fire, and that like if the curtain was pulled back, which you see this curtain, this stage, if the curtain is pulled back, what scene would be revealed? And it's sort of this sad thing, like these people trying to preserve this like small flower, and then there are two cutouts in the painting, and ask the viewer to actually stand inside. And that's really important for me to think about engagement, to ask my art to ask my viewer to consider their place within the work, and placing it on the floor and asking them to step in it. It actually does that a little more. And then surrounding this work are three vessels. These vessels are embodiments of time. Here I'm imagining what it is to live through time, to see the rise and fall of so many civilizations, the loss of so many lives at the at the expense, or like at the hands of like colonial powers. And here these shadows um, become a symbol also of myth, and how the shadow is not the original thing, but it has mutated to become something else. You know, the shape of a shadow is obscure and strange, but it is cast onto these objects, so it's leaving its mark. It is real and powerful and sort of scary. And so here it's almost like these figures are approaching. Um, and so here's another figure. And what was exciting about this exhibition is I had these smaller heads, the 5 heads of all of these different characters that I use as symbols to talk about normative ideologies that reinforce harmful like structures of white supremacy, colonialism, and I try to like dictate like who a person can be. And I have these sculptures sort of looking at their own image, and that was a really exciting moment for me in this exhibition. You know, I'm constantly like looking at my own life and sort of like using these characters to explore sort of aspects that I'm thinking about. And here you get to encounter this moment of them looking at their own image, and that was really important. And so here's that small exhibition wall that I was saying was opposite of the curtain. Um, and again, you have this sort of like character encountering this painting and sort of like engaging with it and seeing its own shadow. So this muscle man seeing its own shadow cast in this painting, and sort of like I'm just asking the viewer to maybe like see themselves, or um, and then last but not least, I still have a show at Curiouser and Curiouser in Kansas City, Kansas, and it's in a small metal shipping container. This show, Symbols, it was supposed to come down this weekend, but it was extended, so you have some time to see this. It's appointment only, so it'll come down November 19th. So you can just DM me on Instagram, and I'd be happy to show you this exhibition. And here, you know, again, I had this wall that I sort of put this tile flooring on, and then like cast the outside of these like larger ideologies, and then sort of like investigating what's left behind, this sort of like residue. And then all of these symbols throughout are sort of like popping up and like are being encountered at different moments. Thanks so much for listening to my work. I really appreciate it, and thank you for this opportunity.
There you have it. All three of them. Thank you so much for sharing and taking the time to create these. It's really insightful. I enjoyed seeing so much of what you're doing. It's amazing how much work you're all prolifically doing. I think one thing I was really interested in was some of it was about the printmaking parts and using a sense of collage as well, and how this is crossing over from 2D to 3D. And I just found that very interesting, how you're all pushing those limits. That and some of these like narratives or fake narratives in like these characters that they're representing to kind of bring up some heavier subjects, maybe sometimes more with humor and some a little heavier. But I just thought maybe with that, I guess I'll go to Johnny Naugahyde, who's been around these parts for a minute, shows a lot down at the Hot, and that domestication of Johnny Naugahyde. I remember that show. That was a great one, and that to me, it seemed like that was the first time that I saw you kind of maybe going into that 3D part. Or could I be wrong about that, Johnny?
In a specific exhibition, yes, that's true, Pat. I'd done some sculpture prior to that, but yeah, I really wanted to combine separate objects to sort of make fun of myself. because friends really do tell me, it's like, oh yeah, your piece hangs above my toilet. Oh yeah, your piece is in my closet. So it's just like, you never know where your friends are going to put your artwork. And most of them put it in the bathroom, it seems like, because they're nice and small. It's perfect bathroom art. So that show came out of that idea.
Nice.
I had to include toilet paper. So
Yeah, yeah. Are you from Kansas City?
no, I grew up in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Great, great, great. Um, Very cool. And Carlos, I've seen your scale go from very small, like Mark's, to huge, like that La Esquina piece. And I guess with some of that, does that have to do with that scale, with the size of your studio, or just the opportunities of having a larger space, or how do you decide? I guess that's all three of you really is the scale that you're working in, from small to big, and maybe just how you decide that.
So I think it's interesting because this larger work has actually been formed mainly in my living room. So in a much more constricted space, sort of having to work with the environment that I'm sort of given and the one that I'm put in. But this sort of idea of beginning to break out and work in a larger scale sort of came after I graduated from the Art Institute. Some of you guys know that my background was in printmaking, and I think a lot of my process and a lot of these pieces that I'm forming are part of this kind of like, I'm trying to unlearn the process of printmaking and sort of printing between a border or printing between like a standard size sheet, and sort of pushing the limit of these prints into sculptural moments and into sculptural forms. And so I think naturally this process of wanting to unlearn and wanting to explore these prints has sort of like bloomed my work into something bigger. But it's kind of getting better because my roommate moved out, so I've been able to use his room, a much bigger space, to sort of be able to, make these installations and make these sculptural objects as I go.
That's great. When I saw that last piece with your mother, I did think of a lot of SK's work too, and just how that installation and going that way. SK, when did you start getting more into the 3D part? Is that from a ceramics background, or how did that fuse?
Yeah, I've only been working in ceramics for about 3 years now. So I had like an exhibition that was called the Museum of Every Day, and I was just really interested in museum presentations, and I was only making paintings at that time. So to have that exhibition, I was like, well, I have to make objects. And then I made these like ceramic plates. And then from there, it was just getting my hands like really involved in this new way. And the way that objects could have relationships with flat works was like really engaging to me.
Gotcha. And I love with Johnny how you've always you're not afraid to use any kind of material, from the leather to that. And I mean, obviously all of you are using collage elements and whatnot. Johnny, how are you making these decisions? Or is it just when you find abundance of certain materials, or how do you jump from that to that?
A lot of it relates to that. Like with SK, when I was doing ceramics, I had access to a kiln for a couple of years. And I was just sort of sitting there. It's like, oh, I can use that. And then, a friend of mine gave me some leather working tools. I'm like, great, let me experiment to learn how to do that. So you're right, Ben. It does relate to what's there, but it's also how you can transform material. Usually anything I can add text to it is very helpful, because a lot of my work is text-based and conceptual as it relates to the ideas. So it's not so much about the materials I use, but some of the ideas and making fun of different things that come forward.
Yeah, I forgot about those, the text that you were doing to artists, and I was noticing how that said 3G on them. I was like, oh yeah, because that was a while ago that you were doing those.
A few of those got a little dark, but not too many people saw them. So
so were they only existing as text, or did you make prints of those?
I made a few prints of them, mostly rubber stamp prints that I included in the H&R Block flat files one year. But yeah, they were pretty limited. Some I posted, but this was before Instagram, which seems odd that so I would have shown them a little bit more differently prior to Insta or after Instagram. But yeah, some text-based.
Life for them, maybe.
Yeah. I tried doing some paintings of them, but they didn't work at all. The scale was completely off, so it's better small.
Gotcha. I love this. SK, maybe you have some questions. You're, finishing up and kind of getting ready and kind of get more into Kansas City, but maybe you have some questions about for the other artists. I'd love to be able to, let you all ask a few questions to each other.
Yeah, I really loved, I think, Carlos, you said you like started pulling more from memory. And so this is probably like for Carlos and Johnny, like how much does memory feed into your work? I think we're all like talking about the present and the past and like kind of mining like history and trying to like change the narratives. But how do you engage with memory with those things?
So at least for me, just part of how I'm trying to reconstruct this sort of like this hazy memory and like these hazy experiences of my past. I think I mentioned at the beginning is through family documents, and it's to beginning to kind of like the unearthing of like your family legacy through these letters and through these documents that are sort of shared with one another. So I think like my work sort of falls in between that combination between I'm pulling from memory, but I'm also very like a stream of consciousness sort of artist. So I'm working with my daily experiences, and I'm sort of trying to combine that into like these new sort of like surreal realities and these moments in which I'm interacting my figures. But I would say that documents and photographs and things like that it's what's helping me sort of dig into this past and dig into this identity.
And for me, rather than memory, it's more about history, either family history, personal history, or the history of the world. So it's I think it relates more to that than specific memories. Certainly memories pop up occasionally in the work, but it's more about the history of the country, politics, art, and politics of all sorts. So
awesome. Mark, do you have any questions or things you noticed about the other work you wanted to ask?
Carlos, the remnants piece was just for me when I first saw it. And then all of us working in collage, the element of each element within the collage seemed, at least to me, I felt what you were talking about in terms of them meaning something. It wasn't just a piece of paper or just a fabric. So if you want, I'd love to hear more about sort of the power of the materials that you use.
Yeah, definitely. So for example, if we kind of remember the image of my father, he's wearing like a striped shirt. And in particularly, I was using these coupons and these ads to sort of make the pattern within his shirt. And in there, I was kind of exploring my own experience. And I remember like we grew up pretty poor. So I would remember my mom always paying with coupons and like holding up the line and sort of feeling that sense of sort of shame, like looking around is like mom's paying with coupons again. But again, it always sort of goes back to like, in a way, linking this material with something in my past or something throughout my history. So I'm always trying to also push the material outside of its context, because they are coupons, but now they're sort of forming part of like this patterned shirt and stuff like that. And even, for example, in that piece, like the remnants, I think there's a table piece. In particular, I'm trying to also play, and I was very interested in how SK was doing her patterned wall with the sort of wood print. In a way, I was trying like to mimic and replicate and play with the eye. So that table that I had put there, it's actually this woodcut that I had printed on this piece of paper to kind of replicate that feeling of wood and this feeling of just like a table. So like it comes from those two things.
Cool. Carlos, did you have any comments or questions? We're kind of wrapping this up.
Yeah, I just had one for SK, and I was just interested in when did you decide to sort of begin introducing your viewers into your work as sort of like this performative sense in which they kind of step into your work, and what was the influence behind that?
I think it naturally started happening when I started using 3D elements, because all of a sudden I had to think about a viewer navigating like around a piece. And then like as I made more objects, it was like, well, I can actually encounter the viewer or like mimic the viewer or ask the viewer to stand. I don't know. So I was just all of a sudden more aware of space, I think.
For sure.
Johnny, do you have any upcoming shows coming? Are you working on a large body or something? I know you kind of seem like you do large bodies and then kind of present them to the world.
Right now, I did 6 pieces for the Flat Files, the show that just closed. Right now, just doing a lot of mail art, sending it off to friends, that thing. So no upcoming shows right now.
And I'm not mail art. I meant to ask about that. So, and I know that's been a long going one. So is that like chain mail, or is that just
No.
anonymous letters like that show up,
Not-
or how
it's-
does that happen?
They're mostly postcards. Like I was in the kiosk show, 2020 Vision, that Aaron and Eric put together. So I did that. So a lot of times I'll just mail work out. I'll do an end of the year mailing where each piece is original art, but the process has to go through the postal system, which I love and adore. And so is postcard based as opposed to inside an envelope. So the markings that the USPS does to your art is part of it. And a lot of times it never arrives. So I always wonder where the stuff ends up, whether it's stolen or trashed. So yeah, so I've been doing mail art for many, many years, and it's really an ongoing thing. And it's fun because it's valueless and it just goes away into the ether, and people love it or never get it. So it's fun.
Unless Carlos finds it.
That's true.
Right.
Well, like I said, this is short and sweet and fast. I really encourage everyone. Well, first, thank you all for tuning in and learning a little bit about the artists in our community. As you can see, there's so much talent in Kansas City and the surrounding areas, and we're just so fortunate to have so much talent, and just being so generous, sharing, your concepts and what you're doing with your work. And please keep that up. And I encourage guests to, like I said, SK's got a show wrapping up, Lady Volkis, Carlos has one coming up at Interurban. Look for your mailboxes. You might get something coming your way. You never know. But after that, and Hope, thank you so much for running all of this for us. But thank you all. We'll have this up on the YouTube channel, Charlotte Street, soon. And we'll see you all next month. So thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you.